After the takeover of Fort Sumter, like I said before, labeled as the first battle of the Civil War, the start of the Civil War, after the takeover, um, President Lincoln sends supplies to try to take back the fort, but eventually the Confederates are going to attack, are going to fire, giving the first shots, as I mentioned in the previous slides, on April 12, 1861, which eventually calls the start of the Civil War. And that event, the April 12 event, will eventually um, put forward or set in motion other states leaving the Union. One of those states is Virginia, who has a high population of slaves, and more importantly, something that is bad news for the North is that this is a place where most of the military academies, most of the top generals are located. So Virginia has the experience of military, has the academies where these soldiers are developed. So there you see a lot of division. One of the things that happens though within Virginia is that Virginia eventually splits into two parts. Most of the people who were against the secession will move towards the northwestern portion of Virginia, therefore creating a new location and eventually creating a new state known as West Virginia. And so this idea was that there were people in Virginia who did not agree upon the secession, and I'll explain that in the map in a few minutes. So after the shots being fired by the South on April 12, again, it sets in motion the division, more states into the secession. So Virginia is one of those, but at the same time as Virginia leaves, you have West Virginia stay and be a part of the Union. Uh, another border state is Delaware. They eventually are going to join the Union after weighing in the situation. They feel like they are more patriotic than traitors, and that's something that was a sentiment for a lot of Northerners. Is that there's no way that you could be a patriot and if you want to leave the union. So you either are a patriot or a traitor, and so anybody who was against the union was a traitor. And so another place, another location where it was very important for the union to control and maintain was Maryland, mainly because of the protection it provided the North. It provided protection for Washington D.C. So one of the things that you will see is that the North will send in troops to make sure that the that Maryland stays in the Union. While there were Confederate sympathizers in Maryland, what Lincoln, his quick thinking is that he sends troops and he starts to put down, any kind of spread of Confederacy ideology, and he eventually um, arrests them and eventually allows them. He literally incarcerates them till November of 1861. By that time, uh, the thought in Maryland was that they were going to be on the side of the Union. You can say that in Maryland, the conflict that developed in Maryland is where you see the first actual deaths, combat deaths between Confederates and Union soldiers. So one of the things that you see is that along the way, the Southerners, Confederates are going to try to destroy as much as possible. Destroying a railway, destroying telegraph lines, and just basically trying to upset the northern advantages, right? Another place where the North was able to control was the area of Missouri. This is a place where Lincoln enacted the German American troops. It's a militia group of German Americans that eventually fought against the Confederates, and they were able to take victories. A lot of these German Americans were anti-slavery, so they were for removing any kind of pro-slavery individuals in Missouri. What ensued in Missouri, though, Missouri and Kansas, was really uh, a continuation of the Bleeding Kansas. It was continuous fighting and death among between different guerrilla groups. The Bushwhackers, which were defending the South, defending pro-slavery, and then the Jayhawkers, also known as the Redlegs, because they used to wear red socks. The Jayhawkers and the Redlegs are pro abolitionist. So these two groups eventually were constantly going back and forth, killing each other, and both had really severe tactics. They were some of the first groups that in the Civil War that enacted total warfare. They would go in and kill anybody. It didn't matter if it was a child, a women, destroy property. And so you eventually see that Missouri becomes, while it's supporting the Union, it sees a lot of fighting between these two guerrilla groups. And again, it's not formal fighting, it's literally attack and hide. And so it was very difficult to catch these groups. And again, both of them were very severe. Again, Bushwhackers were more were pro-slavery, and Jayhawkers were anti-slavery. So that's one of the things you're going to see is that there's a lot of massacres, examples, Centralia Massacre, the Lawrence, Kansas massacre, the Burnt District. These are all forms or names of massacres, destruction that these two groups eventually inflicted in Missouri. And so when we talk about the map that I showed you at the beginning of the other video, you can see here, right? Let's focus on Virginia first. This is Virginia, and you can see the pink area, right? That will eventually become West Virginia, and they are against secession. So that's when you eventually see that you see the creation of West Virginia. And Missouri, like I said, will become will remain a union, and they are constantly being attacked from in Kansas, and they're being they're being attacked by these bushwhackers, and so again, it was a difficult time for Missouri. Most of the deaths there were by the hands of guerrilla groups. And here in Maryland, you can see how it is. While there is some secession sympathizers, the most part is Union, and that's what remains a part of the Union. And again, the idea is that after the Fort Sumter event on April 12th, you see the addition of these other states into secession. And like I said, one of the things that you have in the South when Virginia leaves is the military academies, which is crucial because that's experience in war. And like I mentioned regarding the Bushwhackers and the Jayhawkers, again, these were militiamen. They were not part of the military. They were their own vigilante groups that wanted to put forward their opinion, and that's what eventually happens for the people in the state of Missouri. So one of the things that is important as well is the the border state of Kentucky, that, as mentioned, Kentucky being here, one of those groups, that state, its 500-mile border with the Ohio River allows for the Union troops to use the waterway as transportation for resources for soldiers. So that was key for Lincoln to make sure that he took that Kentucky remained under control or under part of the Union. He didn't send troops in there. He was very careful in making sure that the Union government took control of the state government, and then he allowed for trade to continue with the South, between Kentucky and the South, mainly because he didn't want to upset possible Confederates, and maybe Kentucky leaves to the South. So he waits, he's patient. Eventually, the Union government takes over the state government, and then he starts to his economic action, sends in troops and so on to be in control of Kentucky and allow Kentucky to remain in the Union. The second, the following point is, why are Southerners pushing for this? Why are Southerners so willing to fight for this? Because a lot of them believe, same as Jefferson Davis, who is the president of the Confederate States of America. He says, "Look, we're just like the rebels from the American Revolution. We just want to maintain our style of living." uh, they basically proclaim they just want to be left alone. They just want to be able to um, be able to practice. If it's slavery, a big part of it was states' rights, and that they have that ability um, to to preserve their way of life. As mentioned a bit earlier, we talked about Kentucky and its importance to the Union. As you can see here, the Ohio River is running, connects to the Mississippi River, and eventually allows for transportation, right? Allows for the movement of supplies and soldiers. So it was important for Lincoln to maintain Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Maryland as part of the Union, because that was part of the quest for protection, from the South. One of the things that comes about is this the how to approach this separation. For Lincoln was approached with a plan by Winfield Scott about being not so aggressive and maybe use economic sanctions, maybe use the blockades, kind of just start them out and not really partake in any fighting. But Lincoln eventually opts for aggressive actions. He feels like the Union needs to be taught a lesson and needs to be the use of military is necessary. And again, for Lincoln, he felt that this idea of the South leaving the Union because they want to be left alone. They want self-government. He feels like that's an attack on representative government by leaving a union and not compromising.